This happened a few weeks ago, and if it doesn't belong here, I will remove it. I'm 24 and female, and probably couldn't even defend myself against a 10-year-old. I went to the grocery store to pick up some things the other night. When I got to the register, there was a man helping bag my groceries while the cashier was checking me out. I was buying some dog treats, and he asked what kind of dog I had. I said a golden doodle. I have a golden doodle. My boyfriend has a German shepherd. He said, "OMG, me too." I didn't really get an off vibe from him, but he would just stare at me and never break eye contact at all. I chalked it up to him missing some social cues and just trying to be friendly. After I paid, he started pushing the cart for me out the door. This isn't uncommon. They typically help you take your things to your car. I have social anxiety, and I always feel very awkward and guilty about having them do that for me, so I always just say, "I'm good, but thank you so much." Every other time, they've said, "Okay, have a good one." When I said I'm good this time, the man said, "No, I've got it," very bluntly, and stared at me the whole time. I instantly started to get a bad vibe. It was about 8 o'clock at night, and barely anyone was there. "Well, my shift is over, so I'm walking to my car anyway," he said. Weird, because he didn't clock out, but maybe he had before. This was weird because he didn't clock out, but maybe he had before he did the last checkout. He was very talkative in the store, asking tons of questions about my dog and telling me about his, but when we got outside he barely said anything. I started asking questions about his dog because I felt anxious with the silence, but I really regret that. He took it as an interest. Immediately he said, "Well, if you give me your number, you can meet him," and just stared again. "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't give my number to strangers." I didn't want to say no because I have a boyfriend, because it seemed like he might get really angry over that. I don't know, it was just my gut feeling in the moment. We had loaded all the groceries into my trunk, and I was thinking, thank God I can get out of here now. But no. The cart was between me and him. He was positioned on the driver's side, so in order to get to my door I would have to move past him. "Well, I gotta get home. My dog is waiting for his treats," I said. He just stared. I realized he wasn't going to move, and I was going to have to go past him if I wanted to leave. I looked around to see if anyone else was in the parking lot, in case he tried something, but there was no one. I started to get extremely nervous. He could push the cart into me, or just grab me himself. I've had a traumatic experience before, and my problem is that I don't have fight or flight. I'm one of those people that just freeze. Just like that, he walked away, pushing the cart to where they're returned in the parking lot. I took the chance to get in the car, and I locked the doors immediately. I wish I had left right then, but I needed a moment to breathe. I saw in my side mirror him getting into his car. I quickly put the car in drive and drove out. The exit is a stoplight, and just my luck it's red, and I'm turning left. I see his car right behind mine not 30 seconds later. I panicked at first, but then the thought came into my head. He said he's going home, so it's probably nothing. I only live about 2 minutes from the grocery store. I made the turn, and he was hanging back. I didn't put my blinker on for the next turn. He made it too. The next turn was a stoplight, and then the turn in from my road. As I get to the light, it's red again. I thought maybe I should drive to a police station just in case, but as soon as that thought came into my head, the light went green. My boyfriend and I only moved here 2 months ago, so I couldn't think in my head how to get to the station, and I'm terrible at using my phone whilst driving. I'm not even 30 seconds from the last turn onto our street. Our street is a dead end with only 4 houses on it. It's very long, and we're right at the end. No one would ever go down it unless they lived there or they were lost. I turn, and he makes the turn too. Fuck, I think. I literally just directed him right to my house. Thankfully, I have Bluetooth in my car, so I called my boyfriend. I told him, "A guy from the grocery store is following me. Turn all the lights on, open the gate, and let Nike out." Nike is his German shepherd, and he was trained to be a German police dog and then got some extra bite training. He can hold someone for up to 6 hours, so now knowing he was outside, I was a little less nervous. I was nervous that my boyfriend wouldn't have gotten the gate opened in time, and I would have to either sit in my car or get out fast and put the code in. As soon as I pulled up, though, I saw the gate was opened. Thank God. My boyfriend was out on the front porch with Nike on a leash. I'm not trying to have someone killed unless necessary after all, and he had his gun pointed in the air. I fly through and down the driveway. This fucker follows. Does he not see the gun and the guard dog? Well, he did at that moment, because my boyfriend let Nike go, and he charged to the guy's car. He jumped up at the driver's side window, frothing at the mouth, showing all teeth and the hair on his back standing right up. He looked terrifying even to me, and he was protecting me. I gave Nike his command to come back, hoping this guy got the hint that if he gets out of the car, he'll die. He got the hint. He reversed the car so damn fast out of the driveway he nearly hit the gate. I collapsed on the front porch and just hugged my boyfriend. Nike got a steak for dinner. I reported that man to the grocery store because I remembered the name on his tag purposefully. They later contacted me to let me know that he had been served termination papers. Update. As a result of all the comments, I contacted the local police today. They've contacted the grocery store to get their report of the incident. They said they could try and charge him for trespassing, but probably not since he never even left the vehicle. They said they'll keep me updated. They seemed to be taking me seriously, and thankfully they were all very nice about the situation. I've never really told this story, at least not completely, but it's something that I still think about from time to time. It kind of haunts me. I used to work as a manager of a fast food place in a rather seedy part of a medium-sized city. I'd worked at the nicer location up until they decided to transfer me. There were rumors that the location I ended up getting sent to was going to be shut down, which did end up happening a few years after I finally left. Anyway, the point is, the place wasn't being well taken care of at all. The dining room was dated and old, and the owners were certainly not updating or maintaining the place very well. They were just barely maintaining the very basic safety requirements, and sometimes not even that. For example, I often worked the closing shift, which for this location at the time was about 4 p.m. to midnight. Between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m., it was me running the drive-thru and front counter all by myself, and one employee running the kitchen. At 11 p.m., that other employee would go home, and I was left by myself to tidy up and do the deposit between 11 p.m. and 12 p.m. This isn't really safe, and I'm not sure it was even entirely legal at the time. This was over a decade ago, though, so who knows. Just to provide a little context and background here, I'm a girl, but I'm not what you would consider small. I'm about 6 feet tall, and during this time, I think people would probably say I came across as more than a little stern. I was younger, but I'd already spent years working in fast food, getting treated like crap by customers and having drinks and food thrown at me. The location I worked at was a swarm with junkies and drug dealers, just general scary behavior. All this is to say, I didn't get ruffled very easily, and I could take a lot of things in stride. However, on this night, I was working the night shift with a new guy. The new guy had probably been working there for no more than a few weeks. I'd worked with him a few times before, but never the closing shift, and from the first time I'd met him, I'd always gotten a very strange vibe from him. Again, I'm not someone who, at the time, got ruffled easily. Prior to this, I'd worked with a night janitor at the other location who'd had an Adderall addiction and rather unpredictable and scary rage problem. I also worked with some creepy incel kid who barely spoke more than 2 words at a time. Whenever he did, it was always something about how much he hated women, and me in particular. Not an exaggeration, by the way. But this guy, this new dude, he was a whole different level of weird. He had had a kid and professed to be a single father. He'd brought the kid around during the day, and the kid and his clothing were always really dirty. Like very, very dirty. Not only that, but the kid also had bruises on his head and arms. The kid was just a toddler. I know that toddlers can get into things, but one look at that kid, and I knew that those bruises were not just from a little kid messing around. I never saw the new guy behave aggressively towards his kid at all, but I don't know. It was just a feeling. And that feeling translated into other things as well. I don't know, he was just very creepy. It wasn't one thing in particular. It was just a feeling I always got when I was around him. He was a medium-height, stocky young guy. He was totally average in every way, but he just had a vibe about him. He was always friendly, never rude or aggressive, but his eyes were lifeless, for a lack of better descriptor. Anyways, on this night he might have been called in to cover a shift for someone else. I was in charge of making the schedules most of the time, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have scheduled him to work a closing with me since I found him so off-putting. The first part of the night was fairly normal. I ran the drive-thru and the front counter, and he ran the kitchen between 8 and 11 p.m. He would talk to me on and off between orders, telling me about his ex and how he'd come to be a single father. Apparently, the mother of his child had a drug problem. In hindsight, I think a lot of what he said was meant to inspire sympathy. He really laid the troubled tale of him and his son on thick, but at the time I just felt a little bad for both of them. Especially his kid, who I suspected was being abused. Despite being seen as stern, though, I was definitely still young and naive when it came to manipulative people. He told me that he'd moved to the city, and immediately had trouble finding work prior to getting the job at the place he worked at. He said he'd been running out of money and was behind on rent, bills, and didn't have any formula for his son. At the time, I think I just empathized with him, and said that sucked. We were both working in fast food after all, and I thought it was obvious that neither of us would have any money. The place was bare bones minimum wage, and I was barely getting by with 3 roommates, only pretty much eating the free meal I was given from the restaurant every day. Anyway, he laid it on thick all night, but I don't know that I was really paying all that much attention to it. People tended to ramble when working the late shift, and I'd gotten used to listening to people spontaneously talk about their personal problems. I had developed a habit of just listening and not really reciprocating the sharing. I guess this didn't really go over well with the new guy. At some point, he turned to me and said something to the effect of, "You don't talk much, do you? I'm telling you my whole life story here and you've got nothing to say?" I don't know if it was just that I was coming across as unsympathetic, or more likely, that he was frustrated at being unable to manipulate me into giving up personal details about myself. As far as I was concerned, he was just someone I was working with, and I didn't know him. I didn't really want him to know me, and certainly I wasn't about to start telling him anything that wasn't surface-level chit-chat. But the man was really intimidating. Something about his tone was off. It definitely wasn't a joking accusation or off-the-cuff moment. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I remember just trying to play it off somehow. He didn't say anything more about it, but after that the silence between us seemed very tense. At 11 p.m., it was time for him to go home. The normal procedure was that the kitchen closer would tidy their area, and an actual kitchen cleaner would come in a few hours later to deep clean things. In our case, it was a husband and wife team who did several locations, but they usually didn't come until a few hours after I left. So, this guy was only tasked with a basic tidy, and then I would let him out, after which I would stay behind to prepare the deposit. But instead of this happening smoothly, this guy goes into the staff bathroom and stays there for a long time, almost 30 minutes or something. I didn't know what was going on, nor did I know exactly how to handle the situation. It had honestly never happened before. People usually couldn't wait to get out of there fast enough at the end of the night. Was he sick? Did he fall asleep? I didn't know, but I honestly just wanted to get my work done and go home. He finally emerged and quickly walked to the door and left. I was relieved. It was weird, but I just shrugged it off and hurried back to the office to get done what I needed to get done. Not 10 minutes later, I start to hear a banging at the back door of the restaurant. Loud, repeated banging. Normally, I would ignore this. The back door faced an alley and was right next to a street full of bars and pubs. People leaving the bars and pubs often got the idea that banging on the door would get them after-hours food service, because, well, they were drunk. This wasn't necessarily uncommon, so I just ignored it and kept hurrying to get things done. But the banging did not stop, and it somehow just seemed to get louder and louder, and even more urgent. Finally, I got up and went to look out the peephole to see who was there. At this point, I was definitely on edge, and this edginess swelled into a full-out anxiety attack when I see that it's the new guy standing at the back door. My first thought was to not open the door. I really didn't want to open the door, but I knew that he knew I was in there. What if he forgot something inside, like his house keys or his car keys or something? I was going to have to leave the building by that same door at some point, so there really seemed to be no escaping him. So reluctantly, and very stupidly, trust me, I know, I opened the door. What I opened the door to was quite frankly terrifying to me. He said he left his jacket, or his keys maybe, I can't remember, inside, and I told him to tell me where and I'd go get them. I didn't want him to come back in. If this had been any other person I worked with regularly, this would be no big deal. I'd let them back in, let them get whatever they'd left behind, and they'd take off. But I instinctively knew I didn't want this dude back inside the dark, empty restaurant with me. He wasn't having it. He pushed past me and said he'd get it himself. He then proceeded to shut himself in the bathroom again, and at this point I just panicked. Instead of just staying there by the door, which in hindsight I should have, I rushed back into the office. Stupid girl, that's me, had left some of the cash I was counting for the deposit out. Question: what dummy would answer the back door at night at all, and especially with the till out? Well, this girl, I guess. This dumb girl. I managed to stuff the cash in the safe and lock it before he came to find me. The office was dark. It was summer and the air conditioning was on full blast, but this dude was sweating a lot. I was taller than him, and I'm not a small girl, but somehow I just knew that he was about to hurt me. He was keyed up. I watched his eyes dart around the office, and I grabbed my jacket hanging on the hook next to me. I hadn't finished my deposit, but I was going home. I didn't care how much shit I got into in the morning for my work not being done. I smiled and told him that I was leaving, and that he could walk me out. I was really just trying not to show my panic. Whatever he had planned, I wanted to give him an out for him to rethink it. I smiled, grabbed my purse, and started to move towards the door. New guy, who was standing in the doorway, did not budge though. He started talking about his son, about the money trouble they'd been having, and capped the whole story off with a request for a loan. From the tone of his voice though, it was very clear this was not a loan. He was demanding money from me. He said he would pay me back as soon as he got paid, and that I'd really be helping him out. I didn't know what to do. He had me trapped. I wasn't leaving the office or the building unless he allowed it, but at this point at least, I wasn't leaving without a fight. Something told me that despite my height difference, I wasn't going to win. So I gave him all the money from my wallet. $50, I think. When I gave it to him, he said, "Thanks, you're really helping me and my son out. I won't forget it." But while he said that, he had no expression. No smile. No speech effect at all. He didn't seem grateful or even relieved. He had these dead eyes with arms limp at his sides. It was terrifying. To this day, I don't remember how I got him out the door. All I remember was shutting the door behind him, making sure the door was securely locked, and rushing into the office to burst into tears. I didn't finish my work, but I stayed in there until I could force myself to leave at the same door. I was sure he was going to jump me when I left. The thought never occurred to me to call the cops. I don't know why. I guess I just felt like nothing serious had happened. He asked me for money, and I'd willingly given it to him, despite the fact I felt I had no choice and had been scared shitless. I only saw him one more time after that, but neither of us ever mentioned that night again. I don't know why I didn't ask for the money back. I think I was embarrassed, or scared, or both. I don't know. I don't think I've ever told anyone in my life this story, or at least if I have, I left out the part where I gave him my money and never got it back. Pretty quickly after that, he stopped showing up to his shifts, and I never saw him again. I don't believe in throwing words like psychopath around. I think people overuse psychological terms like that, making them synonymous with anyone who's just horribly misbehaved. There are a lot of varying degrees of terribly behaved people in this world, unfortunately. But after taking a lot of abnormal psych classes, I can definitely say there was something about this guy's effect that was just wrong. I'd smile, he'd smile. I'd frown and he'd frown. It was like talking to someone who was faking and pantomiming emotions. Maybe I'm just remembering it that way because it was such a terrifying experience for me. But the truth is that I've never been comfortable talking about this event, and to this day, when I do think about it, I feel just as uncomfortable as I did the day it happened, more than a decade ago. So this happened almost a year ago now, when I still lived in my apartment complex. It was in a nice area, but it seemed to attract the weirdest people. Basically, I live at home with my mom and younger sister to attend college. Obligatory backstory. There was a neighbor in the building across from mine, an older, single woman named Susan. When me and my sister first moved in, we'd hang out near her building with a former friend, who's worthy of her own story to be honest, and so we developed a bit of a rapport with Susan. We'd bring her tea when she was sick and walk her dog for her. I was next door neighbors with a different woman called Laura. Laura is a mother of 2 young kids, and she and her boyfriend like to sit on their balcony overlooking the parking lot and smoke deep into the late hours of the night. Well, one day, Laura was doing this at around 2 a.m. Laura texts my mom that there's been an incident. My mom tells me and my sister, we both tend to stay up pretty late, and we went to her balcony to see what was up. In the parking lot, we see a car that's halfway backed into another parked car, but almost at a side angle. Laura says the person who was in the car ran away as soon as they hit the other. The car, however, still remained. Still running, too. So, we're all wondering what the hell this is all about. My mom goes downstairs to the car to check for damage when she sees a figure standing at Susan's building. It was a man we'd never seen before, and he was just standing there. Turns out the owner of the sideways car freaked out because he saw us looking, and claims literally, someone stole it and moved it out of the way so they could have my parking spot. The next morning, my mom texts Susan about the incident, as the sideways car was kind of blocking hers in. She says she knows what happened and has us come outside so she could tell us. She's standing with the man from the parking lot the night before. He introduces himself as Eric and says that he's seeing Susan. When we start talking, turns out he didn't actually know what had happened. He only saw someone running from the car. But that story's irrelevant now. Anyway, We get to talking, and apparently Susan had told him about our family and that I'm studying to be a therapist. I confirm it, and he just lights up. He goes on and on about the similar work he's done and thanks me for my service. He starts giving me names of places I can go to for shadowing hours and resources for getting a job. Finally, he tells me to use his name for applying for jobs in the future. He'd get me a job at the psych center he apparently helped to found. I looked it up and could not corroborate. He was very insistent that I use his name. Next, he talks to my sister. Susan had told him she liked movies, so he told her he had a small speaking role in one of those teen book-to-film adaptations we used to obsess over. Of course, when we got home, we looked up his name, that he gave me, along with the movie title. Nowhere was he pictured in the film he gave us, or given any sort of credit for it, so we dropped the movie title and just looked up his name by itself. It wasn't a movie that we found. Apparently, he had been infamous in our town for years, someone known as a child biter. He had earned the name by biting an 8-year-old girl who was playing with his daughter. A few years later, he bites another girl, and apparently even stalked her family in a public parking lot after. Another few years pass and he had a third victim. We're freaking out and texting Laura, who's kind of become our gossip buddy. She has 2 young kids, so she's furious that this guy with actual criminal records was allowed to move in, though he wasn't put on the lease. We were concerned too, because there are a lot of kids that live in ours and Susan's building. The question came up of whether or not to tell Susan. We debated, but decided it was the best thing. My mom sends Susan a long text about how we discovered what we did. 5 minutes later, she calls us. She tells us not to believe the news articles and court records, and the fact that he pled guilty was because he was politically framed by one of the girl's fathers. He was running for some small office or something. My mom covers for me and my sister by saying we looked up his name and the movie in front of Laura. Susan demands to know why Laura's concerned. My mom tells her to talk to Laura herself, so she does. She knocks on Laura's door and asks what her concerns are. She barely even has time to get one sentence out about how there are kids literally everywhere, and she's trying to be a good parent, before Susan turns around and just leaves, just like that. There are a few families whose kids I babysit, who pretty much let their kids wander around the complex all day with no supervision. We tell some of them, and they're enraged. For 2 days, there's not a single kid outside. A few days later, an 8-year-old girl we babysit, Maddie. This poor kid has the worst history with getting the attention of creepy men. I think they pick up on our shitty home life. And her friend ran up to us. They told us about a nice guy at the pool who was giving out M&Ms. A few minutes later, Eric strolls up in his bathing suit, and Maddie tells us it was him. We avoid eye contact, but he slows down when he passes us. We warn Maddie and her friend in 8-year-old terms to stay away from him. Another time, we're visiting a friend who lives in his building. He emerges right as we enter the hallway. He puts on this huge grin and starts making small talk. We awkwardly excuse ourselves and go to the friend's house. We go inside, but our friend keeps peeking out the window. Outside, we see Eric, standing by his car and just staring in through my friend's window. Part of our babysitting includes picking Maddie up from the bus randomly in the week when asked. The bus stop is right next to the pool. And who do we see in a lounge chair with sunglasses, not doing a thing and watching every single day at bus time? Eric. We were all kind of pissed off at this dude. We contacted the property manager, who said she couldn't do anything because he hadn't registered as living there. If he stays longer than 2 weeks, though, he'll be charged for not being on it. Well, the 2 weeks ended, and he disappeared. We never saw him again. I'm still stumped as to why the hell he told me to use his real name as a reference, when a simple search of his name shows all of his history. Again, I lived in a nice area in a small suburban town. No idea what it was about these apartments that just attracted the weirdos and criminals. Maybe it's some sort of unspoken agreement for them to all gather there that we didn't know about. Maybe in a few days I'll post the story of our friend. She claims she was a witch and tried to murder her parents. But until then, creepy man who likes to bite children, let's not meet again. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. Please be sure to like, share, or subscribe if you guys feel so inclined. I actually have a couple of announcements for you guys here at the end card today. So, first off, my friend Alan, who is an artist, I've been working with him on some designs for some merch, for like t-shirts and stuff like that. So hopefully those will be done pretty soon. I'm waiting to get a couple of designs done before I release those, so hopefully you guys will be able to get those soon. Secondly, he also offered to help me make some thumbnails for my videos so that I don't always have to make them myself. So we'll probably be working together a lot in the future. So I'm going to be sure to link all of his social media and stuff in the description below, because he's a really good artist and he's a good friend of mine, so you guys should definitely go check out his work. Also, if you guys want to make sure to get all of the new notifications for when all of my videos come out, make sure to click that little bell right next to the subscribe button and turn the notifications on to all. Because if you set it to personalized, you won't always get the notifications for the channel. They'll just disappear sometimes, so that's how you get notifications for when the new videos are coming out. As always, links to all of my social media will be in the description below, including my Twitter, Gmail, Facebook, and Twitch accounts. I also have a Discord now, so I'll probably be putting that in the description from now on as well. If you guys have a story that you would like me to read, or that you would like to share personally, please be sure to send it to me in a message on either my Gmail or my Facebook, as those are what I check most often. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline the name of the story, what type of story it is, if it has one, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you guys are curious about the music at all used in the videos, the music is always listed in the description below the video in the order which it appears, and I also have links to the artists as well, so be sure to check them out. I think for now, that's everything though, guys, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.